Oh, yeah.
Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to the Ted Alexandro Show. I am your host, Ted Alexandro, coming to you from an undisclosed location in the northeast of these United States of America, where currently a nor'easter, conquistador, nor'easter. I think that was my old Queen's accent. Made an appearance for the holidays. You're welcome. A nor'easter is bearing down, as I record this, on the northeast of the United States of America. They're predicting 10 to 18 inches. Who knows? Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. At least we still have that, right? We still have a nice winter storm to warm the heart and to add a little mystery, a little intrigue, a curveball, which we could all use right now. So I say bring it on. Let it snow. Thank you to everyone for watching. And of course, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell, click like on this video, and comment down below. Jump in, give me what you got. It all helps the old algorithm. We got to feed the algorithm. So let's get on it, folks. And please, if you wish to support the show, go to patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. A new masterclass of the Ted Alexandro Comedy Academy has just been added. So please go and check that out. And I think that's class number 7. But who's counting? They will be ongoing. And this one, the title is Where is the Madness? We discuss finding that spark of, something that makes your work stand out. That's what you're always looking for. You're looking for the madness. So hopefully you will find that in the latest masterclass posted at patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. And thank you to all of our patrons. Special shout out, special thanks to all of you who have been supporting the show. Well, my friends, we have a big guest coming up a little bit later in the show. Very excited to welcome Zephyr Teachout. Zephyr and I met a while back on the Larry Wilmore nightly show. And we've kept in touch a bit over the years, and I'm a big fan. She's always up to good things, and she will be joining us a little bit later in the show. Fordham law professor, anti-corruption expert, always taking on the big conglomerates, those who are above the law, for the sake of the people. So a little bit later, Zephyr Teachout will join us. And I wanted to first talk about her former opponent when she ran for governor in, I believe, 2014, our current governor in New York State, Governor Andrew Cuomo, who lately has been beloved, right, because of his updates, his daily COVID updates, especially earlier in the pandemic. He became a bit of a media star to the point that he was awarded an Emmy. That's right. You didn't hear me wrong. Governor Cuomo received an Emmy from the International Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, being honored for his daily coronavirus briefings earlier this year. So if you needed any further evidence that the line between showbiz and politics has been irrevocably blurred. I mean, if a Trump presidency didn't already tell you that. But to my knowledge, Trump does not have an Emmy. Maybe he does. Would not surprise me. But Andrew Cuomo was awarded an Emmy for his daily coronavirus briefings. Mind you, New York has been the epicenter of the virus throughout this whole pandemic. Recently spiked again. Everything is being shut down again. Small businesses closing left and right. People not able to pay their rent. People being evicted. The economic impact is ongoing and getting worse, obviously, as the months roll on. How are people expected to continue to pay rent, continue to make their bills, pay a mortgage? How are all these things expected to happen with no income coming in? Just about everyone has been impacted. I know plenty of comedians, myself included, who have, taken a big hit and are just trying to, figure things out as we go. And that in no way makes comedians unique. This is across the board for people in the gig economy, people who are freelancers, certainly artists. But in recent years, everyone is in the gig economy, and everyone is trying to put together a living. So at a time when all of these things are bearing down on people, and it's only getting worse as the months and days and weeks go by. But wait, we've got an Emmy for the governor, for his portrayal of a governor on TV. I mean, can they be any more out of touch? Can they be any more out of touch? It's like, great. We love your television work. It's your governorship that we have an issue with. We love the way that you lead on television. You have a very warm presence. You have a nice rapport with your brother, CNN news anchor, who conveniently got the virus, made that spiked not only the pandemic numbers, but it spiked the ratings, and surely helped you to secure this Emmy for your portrayal of a governor. I mean, it's like something out of Idiocracy, really, that we're awarding politicians Emmys as people are dying. What is it? It's approaching like 300,000 now, nationally. I don't know how many of those are in New York, but a sizable amount are in New York. I mean, by most measurements, Cuomo and virtually every politician has bungled this from the start. I mean, I did a stay-at-home comedian, the Instagram comedy special in the early going, where I was talking about this very thing. I talked about how they were heaping praise on Cuomo for his updates and his daily press briefings. But meanwhile, he's telling people to go to restaurants. He's telling people to go to parks and all these things. It doesn't matter if you fuck things up and if you put people in harm's way and you lead to the virus spiking and people dying. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if hospitals went without basic supplies. We were utterly unprepared in virtually every way, but we really like your television work. Who's representing? Who's he with? Is he with William Morris? Are they an agency? I'm out of the loop. Is he getting a first look deal? He's hot. He's surpassed. This has really got to gall Chris Cuomo, who already works in television, and I'm wagering does not have an Emmy for his work. But his brother, who plays a governor on TV, became the first Cuomo to secure an Emmy from the International Academy, of Television, Arts, and Sciences. Oh, but that's not the only reason Governor Cuomo has been in the news of late. No. Let's not just focus on his award-winning television work. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has been accused of sexual harassment by Lindsey Boylan, a former staffer and current candidate for Manhattan Borough President. Lindsey Boylan tweeted, if we can pull that up. Yes, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed me for years. Many saw it and watched. I could never anticipate what to expect. Would I be grilled on my work, which was very good, or harassed about my looks? Or would it be both in the same conversation? This was the way for years. And by the way, she added, I know I was not the only one. So, beloved television presence, Emmy-award winner, and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has been publicly accused by one woman, a former staffer, Lindsey Boylan, and she has said, of course, due to the nature of these types of things, she knows that there are more, but these people have elected thus far to remain silent for all of the reasons that you would expect. Not wanting to be in the public eye, not wanting to rehash traumatic experiences, not wanting to be the victim of attacks of their own credibility in their own lives and opening up their lives to the circus that all of that invites. So is it any shock? Is it any surprise in this day and age, in this climate where we just had a presidential election between two candidates who have been credibly accused of everything ranging from rape, sexual assault? President Donald Trump has a long list of accusations. And President-elect Joe Biden was credibly accused by Tara Reid of sexually assaulting her. Like, these things don't even matter, right? They don't matter in the landscape. Like, violence towards women, though it's given lip service by these very people, it does not matter. It does not matter. And it will certainly be no impediment to your upward trajectory, whether you aspire to win an Emmy for television work, exemplary television work, or the highest office in the land. If you are a sexual predator, if you are violent towards women, if you are abusive, if you are a serial harasser, worry not. Opportunities await. So, do I believe Lindsey Boylan? Of course I believe her. Of course I believe her. These powerful men with sizable egos who are above the law and operate above the law and carry themselves above the law are capable of such things for sure. And why would anyone, as I said earlier, put themselves in this type of arena other than to speak their truth? speak the truth. So I support Lindsey Boylan, and I hope Emmy-award winner Andrew Cuomo is taken to task for the things he has done. Because too often these types of men continue to be celebrated, and it must be so galling. I feel badly for Tara Reid, who has to watch the man who allegedly assaulted her, Joe Biden, ascend to the Oval Office. And Lindsey Boylan has to watch as Governor Cuomo is lauded for his television work, among other things. It is galling for many reasons, and it really kind of illustrates the need for overhaul in the ways that we vet these candidates. For starters, taking violence towards women seriously so that it is not dismissed. We do not make the victim, that they are not the recipients of hate and all sorts of attacks. We put them on trial. We put the survivors on trial. And these guys skate off and become president and become governor and win Emmys. When will we hold their feet to the fire and really expose these behaviors as being unacceptable? And they should really be out of office. They should never get to office behaving this way. So it just, to me, it just further underscores the absurdity of all of it. That he, Governor Cuomo, and he is in no way unique, as I said, behaved this way and got away with it, and wins Emmys for pretending to have a pandemic under control as it rages out of control, and as clearly he can't even control his own behaviors. So the circus rolls on, friends. The circus rolls on. But I support Lindsey Boylan, and I hope that Cuomo is taken to task and held accountable for the things that he has done and for his misdeeds and the sexual harassment that he directed towards Lindsey Boylan and supposedly several others. And congratulations on your Emmy, Governor. All right, friends. Again, please do hit subscribe. Ring that notifications bell. Click like on this video and comment down below. If you wish to support the show, you know where to go. Patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. Thank you again to all our patrons. And though we are not live streaming at the moment, please continue to send your texts with any comments, any questions. You can text me at 909-575-0737. All right, my friends, I'm very excited to welcome our guest for today's show. She is a firebrand, a truth teller. She's a Fordham law professor, former political candidate, anti-corruption expert, activist, and author of the book Break 'Em Up. Hear, hear, break 'em up indeed. Let's welcome Zephyr Teachout. Hello, Zephyr. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
Oh, fine. You look like you're coming from outer space with the background of nothingness.
Yes, yes. Good. I am hurtling through space, trying to make sense of it all. Thank you so much.
Well, I realize the one downside of doing this later is that the light may go down, and I have the daytime Zoom set up here, so hopefully I won't totally vanish myself, but we'll make it work.
You and me both. I mean, it'll just fit in, we'll just kind of fade into the atmosphere. So thank you so much for joining me, Zephyr. I was thinking back that you and I first connected, if I recall, on Larry Wilmore's nightly show. Is that correct?
Yes. I know, we were this sort of brief, wonderful moment.
Yeah.
And it was a great show, but it's been 6 years or something.
Yeah, it's been a while. And then you were nice enough to do my show in Astoria, my live show, the Ted Alexandro show at Astoria, and that was great as well. So it's been great to keep up with you, and then of course to see the things that you've been up to, because you're always up to good things. And I was thinking to myself, for an anti-corruption expert, business must be good, because I mean,
I can't wait.
Unprecedented.
I know, it's like, well, finally, at least emoluments is going to go out of fashion. There was sort of a brief period where being an expert in emoluments, which I'd written about before Trump came in to office, as this totally weird, obscure provision of the Constitution for the last 4 years. It's, unfortunately been at the heart of so many different very serious problems, including basically Trump taking lots of money from foreign governments, and some of the impacts you can only speculate, but the relationship looks pretty clear, including slaughter of the Kurds, for instance, taking money from the Turkish government and being very intertwined with the Turkish government seems to be the only coherent explanation for allowing really awful, devastating, deadly activity. So Trump is now out of office, but of course that doesn't mean that we are done with problems of corruption. They're just not quite so cartoonish and grotesque, but they're still very much there, very serious.
Yeah. I'm wondering, is that your ringtone? You have a police siren to alert? Was that coming from you? I was like, what better
that
ringtone?
Is just looking at that's my apartment. Yes.
So,
sorry, I can try to put the headphones on if you need.
No, not at all. It's actually a perfect backdrop. Now, as you alluded to, Trump leaving office clearly is not the end of corruption or the end of all of these types of unseemly relationships. In fact, you were under fire a bit for criticizing Biden. I think it was during the primaries, right? Because you were kind of a surrogate for Bernie Sanders, and you came out and kind of illuminated some of Biden's corruption over the years, and received some attacks for that.
Yeah, I mean the precise, and I write about corruption, so I want to be very precise. The precise concern that I was focused on in that essay was a concern that because of these histories, especially in relationship to the credit card industry and other big donor industries, it made him a weak candidate. So the particular concern in that essay was about politics, and really recognized that, massive gulf between Trump and Biden. But I think those questions are very much alive today, because it is totally clear that Trumpism isn't going away, and that the deep, neither the racism, the bigotry, the anger, or the kind of nihilism, like nothing matters, government can't act, you can't trust anybody. That is like a pretty big part of the political soup these days. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's especially incumbent on Trump not to say, well, the bar is, on Biden, not to say, well, the bar is where I'm better than Trump, or the bar is I'm not violating the Constitution, but to actually take this moment and say, okay, we are going to turn this thing upside down, not engage in the kind of elite, soft, or legal, non-illegal corruption that has been part of DC for so long. And there's something that happened today that just really sort of hit me in my gut. There's been reporting on it before, but it's that, Biden is going to have a virtual inauguration, right?
Right.
Which is good. And remarkably, there are still donors to the inauguration. And in fact,
is that right?
Yes.
There's donors.
So okay, so
despite, yeah, he'll be sitting in a bunker, but
right.
they're donating to the festivities.
It's kind of surreal. It's kind of like meta, like they have to keep this interaction going. But it's actually really troubling because Biden doesn't need big donors. Like there are more than enough. I talk to local candidates who can't break through, who don't know how to get to the small dollar world. That is not a problem for Joe Biden and Harris. There are more than enough small dollar donors to support an inauguration and other political activities that he may want to be supporting. And why then have an inauguration committee where you're taking corporate money, including up to $1 million in corporate money, to be a sponsor? And there's something really surreal about it.
If you have a Zoom account, you're good. Just press play and let's roll, right?
Yeah, and I think it reflects a kind of like deep habit. Like this is the way things work.
Yeah.
And the exchange that's being reported on is $1 million gets you a virtual photo with Biden and Harris. That's a little confusing what that is.
Yeah.
A virtual signed photo.
Wow. And that's
and then
you said $1 million for that?
A briefing.
That's $1 million for that?
Yes. Yeah.
That sounds like a good investment.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's,
right.
I mean,
but
like
the really dangerous part is there's access to a briefing.
Right.
And so it's like, what's happening in that briefing? Right. Either nothing is happening in that briefing, in which case all of these people are just marks, for giving $1 million, or it's the kind of briefing where you kind of like close the window on what's possible. Like, let's make sure we don't actually rock the boat too much on this or that policy. And I mean, right now we need to rock the boat. People are suffering. People are hungry. People are out of work. We need the most aggressive economic revitalization approach. And you do not want corporate actors in there looking kind of skeptical and, giving all those silent signals about what is reasonable and what is not, which is the way a lot of DC corruption works.
That should be the briefing right there. Everything you just said should be the briefing. That is worth $1 million as far as I'm concerned. Now, what do you make of the fact that the left has almost wholly been dismissed by the Biden administration? We're seeing a lot of the usual suspects. I mean, I don't know why anyone would expect any different. But don't you almost seem as though it's like a rebuke of the progressive left? Because they are so centrist. And you and I have talked about this in the past. Like, it's really almost a rebuke, not only of the progressives, but of democracy, because it just eliminates the voices of all of these people who clearly, as you just articulated, especially in a pandemic, are looking for progressive, platform legislation. And it's as if winning was all they were setting out to do. And now let's kind of stay in our lane and business as usual.
Yeah. I mean, there's the Biden cabinet so far is kind of weird. it's a lot of, we don't know all the parts of it yet, but there are a lot of people who themselves have either come out of Obama, and there's a few punches in the face, like Bill Sack is a punch in the face, just to be clear. He has been terrible for farm workers, for farmers, for ag, and did a terrible job in Obama's administration, and then went to go work for Big Ag. So that's just a punch in the face.
Perfect revolving door.
It's also idiotic. It's perfect revolving door, and it's just idiotic politics. Yeah. So so there's a lot of question marks. Like there's a few that are better than I might have thought, and that's good. But there's a kind of absence of direction. Like somebody comes from here, somebody comes from here, and there's people who themselves have been kind of second in command, and you don't know what their driving energy is. And so as a matter of politics and policy, that's also kind of weird. It's like there's this vacuum in terms of direction. Like, who's going to be, I can't stand Larry Summers. So I say this as somebody who can't stand him, but who is going to be that Larry Summers kind of energy that drives the administration, who is the force driving in one direction or another? And there's a kind of like absence of an anchor in the appointees so far.
For better or for worse.
Political matter. Yeah, right. It does create more possibility. I mean, just to be clear, like, it means that our job as activists is like, we're not just going to be saying, get rid of Summers. We're going to be saying, okay, there's a question mark here. We don't know which way they're going to go. We're going to push. As a matter of politics, it just seems crazy because, I mean, Biden won the primary. But there is no doubting that energy is in the progressive space, that like creativity, that like spirit and force and power and
hunger, sometimes quite literal, because the progressives tend to be people that really need the things that they're advocating for. Whereas, like you say, the people that are at suit and tie, $1 million donation or whatever, there's no real skin in the game for so many of the things that they're pushing for, other than to make a donation and see something implemented.
Yeah, so you put in incredible progressive as the head of the Department of Transportation, somebody who has been fighting against Uber and Lyft, who has a vision for transportation where people get paid and you don't have a spike pricing, who has an actual vision that is about workers and sort of the last mile transportation and people who are shut out. That's a moment where you can engage me and you, and like we'll say, oh, I don't like that other one. But if you put in some strong progressive voices, if you get Bernie Sanders, the Department of Labor, I mean, there's some other possibilities for the Department of Labor that are actually kind of interesting, but I'll just use Bernie as an example. You put Bernie Sanders as the Department of Labor, you know he's going to be out on those strike lines. And you know that changes our relationship with Biden to one of partnership. And a failure to do that, a failure to like bring into key leadership positions is a significant failure. And then there's also this weird aspect of putting people in jobs that are not their own areas of expertise, which an idea of expertise can be really convoluted in DC. Expertise is not working for a big law firm. Right. We need a lot more people from labor backgrounds, basically. I'd like to see labor in every part of the administration because we are in absolute crisis of work right now.
Yeah. Do you feel as though there's a gaping disconnect and quite frankly, a potentially deadly disconnect between the moment and the things that are truly going on, both in terms of the pandemic and its economic ramifications, to say nothing of the health ramifications, but with regards to the way it impacts the economy and people's ability to earn a living, pay their bills, pay their rent, et cetera, there seems to be such a failure to grasp what people are going through from Biden, Harris, certainly from the Trump administration. There was, I guess, some speculation that he might just throw some money in an attempt to help win him some votes, but that didn't happen. But I focused more on Biden, Harris going forward.
Yeah.
You just, like, coming from an activist point of view and a perspective of people tied to labor and all this, you just want to pull your hair out. Like what is it going to take for legitimate action to be taken on behalf of working people, poor people, people who are struggling?
I mean, I wouldn't be an activist if I didn't still maintain hope. And so the hope is at both the local and the national level. And the hope here is, sorry about the background
That's
noise.
Okay. Like I say, it feels appropriate.
As a snowstorm is descending.
Yes, it is.
The hope is that when in office, it becomes absolutely clear that doing nothing or doing a little is totally unacceptable and totally doesn't meet the moment. And that the hope is that we continue to push on. I think that there's like a few different areas, but one key one is what Biden could do on his own with executive actions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, we were just talking about Department of Labor. Department of Labor can issue classifications about what a worker is that effectively undoes a lot of the Uber, Lyft, really devastating effort in California recently, Prop 22. I mean, that would be extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Antitrust, which is an area I care about enormously. I mean, monopoly is theft. It's a way that big choke point companies steal from small businesses and from workers. Mm-hmm. And if you have the Biden-Harris administration take on Amazon, that is actually a wealth transfer. If you take on Amazon and say, you're going to break up, that's a wealth transfer from Jeff Bezos, who's made 70 million grotesque, undeserved dollars in this, 7 billion. I mean, like, the numbers are so big during this pandemic. Like, that's sick. That is money built, that is money that is taken from workers who are risking their lives and taken from small businesses. And, you know, in the 2008 crash, which for me was a seminal moment, our failure to respond to the 2008 crash, our failure to go after big banks in a core way, we saw half of Black wealth disappear. In this pandemic, we are looking at as much as 50% of Black businesses going under. And that isn't just numbers, that's communities, that's sources of political power, that's centers of communities. The response so far, you know, Biden and Harris have talked about racial equity and dealing with racial equity. If you want to deal with racial equity, you've got to take on corporate power. So there's a question mark in terms of who they are and what direction. Like, you can't have a sailboat go in no direction. Like, where's it going? It's got to go in some direction. The worst direction is pretty bad. But the best direction is to say, I mean, I think that progressive Democrats have done a really good job in recent years in answering the question, who did what to whom? It's not like it just happened. It wasn't a snowstorm. The pandemic happened, but our federal response was to bail out Wall Street and leave small businesses and people with a few months of support, but not enough to make, not enough to survive. And by the way, hugely, when you're bailing out finance, that has a racial impact. It's not like, you know, it's sort of a pretense that this is race neutral. If you want to address racial inequality, you have to go after corporate power and Wall Street.
That's such a good point too, because we focus kind of myopically, but necessarily, of course, on police brutality and these types of things that get everyone's attention because they're shared on social media, et cetera. And thank God they are. But as you say, with that question of who did what to whom, these systemic things that go on that so many people are so quick to dismiss, those can be devastating in myriad ways. And, you know, like you said, we saw that with the crash, and we're seeing it now with the pandemic and the disproportionate numbers of communities of color that it impacts. And like these types of things go on and on and on. And as you say, you know, like we really have to address the systemic nature of so many of these things, because I mean, 12 years ago was the crash, right? So like here we are again at this another seismic moment. And it's like, when are we going to address the systemic nature of these things? And I'm sure, you know, I'm preaching to the choir, and you do these things, and you run for office, and you do all these things. And I thank you for it, because as you say, it's a hopeful act, but it is maddening.
Yeah. And it's just to be a little grim for a minute.
Please. Plenty of room for that.
Our Supreme Court right now is a anti-democratic wrecking ball filled with 5 people who are to the right of Justice Roberts, who wrote the lead opinion gutting the Voting Rights Act. So I don't want to be depressing about it, but we have to be real about it. That institution is so problematic, and we've held on for so long to the idea that that's the sort of our heroic savior. But I think right now, looking at the Supreme Court, it is bad for workers, bad for civil rights laws. We're going to bad for the few anti-corruption laws we have left.
So what do you propose changes to that institution?
Yeah. I mean, I'm back in 2014 when we met. It's like we should hold on to that which is valuable, but stop holding on if it started to be a really dangerous oligarchic force. And there's nothing magic about 9. I think we should change that, have term limits. All those things I think are really important. But I just mean like where we are, it narrows room for action in a serious way right now. It's so important to win in Georgia, but we'll see what happens there, right? Yeah. McConnell is really incredibly devastating. And these big corporations have been gaining power in the pandemic and then shoveling that into politics and access politics. So these are some of the incredible challenges we face. And we honestly have leadership in the Democratic Party with Schumer and Pelosi, who are not out there every day pushing an aggressive agenda. Who are not out there, who are not actually showing the fight. You might lose some of those fights, but I think like showing that you have a place that we need to get to.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, even for theater, even to kind of pretend, right? For even just to show progressive people or the constituents who are desperate for something, just to give them a nod.
I disagree with you, Pelosi. Right, I might disagree with you, Pelosi, on this, but you've got a vision and you've got an image of a society where workers have more power, and you're fighting for labor in a serious way every day. So just to give the depressing vision is if the Democratic Party, and this a lot's on Biden and Harris, but lots on us to push them, does not rise to the challenge, the vacuum that is created by that absence of aggressive leadership will very easily lead to Democratic losses in 2022 in the Senate, and could easily lead to a Republican, maybe even Trump winning again. So the stakes are incredibly high. For today, for tomorrow, for what's happening in people's lives today, but also for the future. So it's like, I keep using the word energy, but it's like we need to see from Biden and Harris energy, and energy requires that you know who did it to you. It's not it's not a weather storm. It's saying somebody's taking that money. Somebody's benefiting from this system. Okay, Biden, who is benefiting? Tell us who is benefiting. And he has a special responsibility when it comes to criminal justice because of his own past history as sort of a key driver of the mass incarceration movement earlier in his career. So he has a special, I'm moving to another area, but he has a responsibility to take that role, the role that he has, and say, okay, a lot of it's going to happen in the States. But it is the responsibility of the leadership of the Democratic Party to lay out an alternative vision. And it can't be just a little less than the terribly bad vision we've had for 30 years. Yeah. So, I mean, the good news is, like, the activism is incredible. Like, the level of people running for office, engaging, you remember 6 years ago, it's totally different. Yeah. If you look at this as post-crash politics, we are in a different era in terms of like what can happen in New York City, what can happen in New York State, what can happen nationally, but we got to build the infrastructure. It's not just about individual, adulation. It's about infrastructure and power.
Yeah. And that's a great segue, because I wanted to discuss with you. You were almost, everyone's talking about the squad and all this kind of stuff. You were the squad before the squad. You were out there primarying against Andrew Cuomo, right? This political titan from a family that had been in the New York machinery forever. And you primaried against him in 2014. And I took notice of that, as did so many people. And you kind of came out of nowhere. People didn't know who you were. And you made inroads and you made an impact. So, yeah, how do you feel now? I mean, it must galvanize you And that's got to be a lonely road to walk in a certain extent, but it takes a special kind of person, which you are. So how do you feel as you see all these people who are kind of picking up that torch that you were among the first, at least that I saw, to do?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually, I'm super proud of that race.
Yeah, you should be. Yeah. That you talk about hope, Zephyr, that was a beacon of hope for people that just see the landscape of politics as being totally corrupt. Nobody's speaking our language. And you went in there and just blew in from, seemingly nowhere and took on Cuomo. So yeah, no, you should be proud. I wholeheartedly agree with that. You're welcome.
And this is where the world has changed. Because I remember talking in 2014, 2015 to people to activists about running for office. And it was starting to change then, but there was still this sense like, excuse my language, but that's like a shitty, gross place to be.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's like swimming in the mud, right? And so I'm going to stay here and stay there's almost like a church state dimension. Like I'm going to stay in my nonprofit activism. I'm going to stay outside.
Right.
Yeah, right. And what has been amazing is that is no longer the case. It's like a deep understanding of not only the seamless interaction between politics and activism, but they both need each other. So, this is one of Obama's major errors, is as he went into office, you remember 2007, 2008, like the grassroots power that Obama built?
Sure.
And then cut off in 2008 and made very clear, like, I don't need an outside force. I'm not going to help build the institutions, these decentralized institutions. This was in November 2008. Many of us remember it. Well, the cost of that, the cost of like the lone politician, and some of the mistakes are his own, but some of them are structural. If you are a lone politician not engaged with people who are doing the work, and not sort of held accountable by grassroots activism, well, there's only so much you can do, and maybe you even change what you want to do, because you're more likely to be talking to somebody who spent last 5 years working for Morgan Stanley than you are going to be talking to somebody who is lacking for dental care.
Yeah.
So I just like when I see AOC, Pramila Jayapal, Jamal Bowman, who I tried to get Jamal Bowman to run against Cuomo in 2018.
Oh, is that right?
Before Cynthia Nixon ran, before I met her.
Yeah.
And so I'm so happy to see him. He's such an incredible leader who comes from activism and comes from focusing on education with accountability to his geographical constituents, but also to education activists.
And he was a former teacher, right? Because I did a benefit show for him at Eastville Comedy Club.
You did?
Yeah, the owner of Eastville, I think they had gone to school together or something, so they were friends. And so I met Jamal there, and very impressive guy, and I was happy to see him win.
Yeah. A middle school principal,
That's right. Which I appreciate, yeah.
Yeah, but this is part of the institutional change. So we have individuals, but it's still a ways away. Like, who is standing up against like Pelosi was engaged in will propose a bill that we know McConnell won't pass.
Right.
Well, if you're going to do that, then put in there what you really want. And it was still so weakened, and there were relatively few Congress members. There weren't enough to really make a strong resistance on, basically for more money for people, for more support for salaries, which is one of the things Pramila Jayapal. And so it's like each individual Congress member matters, but I actually think, institutions are powerful, powerful things.
Oh, sure. And so slow moving, slow evolving, right?
Yeah, but I am looking out on New York City in in East Harlem, where I live, and where there are businesses shutting down, incredible amounts of rising unemployment. The crisis level here is so great, and the fantasy that you can sort of go back to 2008 and sort of feel the Obama spirit, and should just bring in all the Obama people back and everything will be fine. There is no going back to Kansas right now. We don't want to go back to Kansas. There's this weirdness. One of the things I've been thinking about is, Trump's white nationalist nostalgia is so obviously really dangerous, but nostalgia isn't going to work for anybody right now. And the effort of Biden to be nostalgic for Obama, it's like, no, actually, wages didn't rise during those 8 years either. We need something much more fundamental.
Yeah, no, and I think that is what kind of aided Trump's rise in a lot of ways. The kind of false promise of the Obama presidency, those years, and people being left in the lurch. So you so often write about, the book that you wrote, Break 'em Up, talked about the power of monopolies and just essentially the consolidation of power across the board, and how that is basically, again, undemocratic, because it just consolidates resources, and it excludes people, and it also takes away their power. So what do you see now? Because as you alluded to, Bezos and so many billionaires have used this opportunity to further consolidate power, wealth. How will the pandemic kind of exacerbate those problems that you talk about in your book?
I mean, it's been terrible. It's like you take a society that is top heavy and you add a pandemic to it, and then you add a Congress that really had one shot with McConnell, and in that one shot, I mean, once he got the first one out, he basically felt like he held the reins. Did long-term bailout for the wealthiest and short-term bailout for everybody else.
Yep.
So all of those together are leading to, I mean, in the restaurant industry, just devastation, collapse. In tech, you see this incredible M&A activity where the big characters are just trying to gobble up even more. And I just want to underline this point. This is a form of government. This isn't they are governing us. You, Ted, your show, Zuckerberg, I assume you show it gets shared on Facebook and other social media.
Yeah.
Is that yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Zuckerberg and Sandberg get together and they change their algorithm one day. That is life or death for you. There's this kind of like gross, arbitrary, concentrated power that is sucking away key revenue sources from the arts and from journalism. And at the same time,
specifically, sorry to interrupt, but that has definitely plagued a lot of left-leaning progressives who have YouTube shows, YouTube presence. Everyone from fellow comedians, Lee Camp, Jimmy Dore, the algorithm has kind of shifted, and I would include myself among them. I kind of wonder if my participation in Occupy Wall Street and, getting arrested and Black Lives Matter, if certain things, as you say, it's just odd. Sometimes I question, are they suppressing the numbers of these left-leaning voices in the arts and comedy? Right. Yeah, so... Yeah, it's one of the things pretty apparent.
Is that people are rationally paranoid right now when it comes to big corporations. Because if you're an Uber driver and you suddenly get cut off, why? Like, what part of the algorithm cut you off that you're no longer getting rides? You have nobody to appeal to. If you're selling on Amazon and you're higher or lower, if you're a chicken farmer and you suddenly get worse eggs, there's all of this rational paranoia.
The invisible hand of the market is actually visible, right?
Well, it's like, we know who it is now. It's Mark and Jeff and Tim, and they're saying, like, there was news recently that Tim Cook saw that show was developing about Gawker, and he's like, not on my platform. Wow. So you see these little hints that make you paranoid, but paranoia is actually really dangerous for democracy, because paranoia is when you don't know whether it's not an accusation. It's just, I don't know the moments at which I am being shut down because of my political views, but you're not wrong to feel totally out of control. Like, this is not you don't have options, you don't have different places you can go. Or, I mean, for something like Facebook and Google and YouTube, you might want something more like a platform that has non-discrimination at its core, which is an old idea in American law of, common carriage regimes, like you can't discriminate. But instead you're stuck like, am I being paranoid or am I not? So it's bad because it extracts value and wealth, and it's bad because it introduces paranoia and isolation, and you don't know why you're being treated differently than somebody else. And that paranoia then also feeds Trumpism, so there's there's so much dangerous about monopoly government that is economic, but there's also a lot that's sort of quasi-spiritual in terms of what it does to our ability to see ourselves in the world, see who's controlling us.
That's such a good point, because that literally impacts your bottom line, whether you're driving an Uber or doing a YouTube show or whatever the case may be, where if it's not a democracy or a free market, you do start to, it does start to play on your spirit, and you wonder, what do I have to do?
But you asked what can happen. There's a weird politics around antitrust. It's like one of these weird areas where if you look at the polling, and polling isn't everything, leadership is important, but it's not a huge difference between left and right. Everybody's ready to break up these big companies.
Right.
It's just the amount of money they poured into Washington makes it really hard to punch through. So really good leadership on Biden's part on this could make a difference. This is an area where even with a reluctant McConnell, you can bring lawsuits. You can, the lawsuits against Facebook and Google are really, really important, and could lead to breakups, and could lead to a kind of like, we don't want Zuckerberg as king of the truth, and we don't want YouTube, YouTube as the only non-transparent algorithmic, but it's, individuals are always behind the algorithm.
Sure.
And those individuals are overwhelmingly white themselves, by the way, and they bring their own biases. So it's not, I guess I keep bringing this up because I think, again, there's a tendency to think about corporate concentrated power in race neutral terms, and it is so much not a race neutral world.
Yeah. And it's interesting the ways that, having the first Indo-Asian vice president kind of plays into the illusion that these things are being addressed in a substantive way, where, the skeptic could say, oh, it's purely cosmetic, and it's kind of throwing a bone towards that notion. But as you say, so many of these things are baked into the system, whether whether the intent is to be intentionally evil or not. Sometimes it's just the fact, as you say, that these things are being implemented by all white men. And what do you think the impact the outcome will be?
Yeah. I don't think there's an either or there. I think that there's something really meaningful about Harris as vice president.
Sure.
And I think it should not stand in for structural change. It's like it's not structural change, but it doesn't mean it's not meaningful. Sure. So politics has multiple different roles, and addressing the despair, inequality, and problems in our policing and problems in our corporate world, all are structural issues that we have to address structurally, which doesn't mean that it's not incredibly powerful, because politics also plays a role in allowing people to see themselves in politics and connect and feel like they are a part of politics. And that is important. That's not nothing. That's actually, I think that's something to celebrate. It's just not all of politics.
No, I agree. Before I let you go, Zephyr, I did want to ask you about one of the most important changes that has happened in both of our lives since we first met, and you became a mom.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a son who will be one soon. How has motherhood?
Okay, so how?
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So what's his name?
Nico.
Am I allowed to ask?
Of course, yeah. Nico will be one
wonderful.
on Christmas Day.
Oh, wow!
Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh.
And we're expecting number 2 in April, so it's an exciting time.
You are?
Yes.
Oh, that's incredibly exciting.
Thank you.
Well,
yeah, and congratulations to you. Yeah, I know you have a child as well.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, you have so much to look forward to. I mean, I love every part of it, but the sort of verbal play and change and right now is amazing.
Yeah.
He's decided that he really likes making me laugh, which I approve of. But like at all times, he'll just do something like, that's funny. It's like, well, maybe. And I have a lot to say about my son, but it's also been wonderful. And I have an amazing daycare community. And I also feel really lucky because I think as a parent, it's been an incredibly difficult time during this pandemic. And I've been lucky because daycare is open. And also I have a job that is compatible and an age at which being at home a lot is not a problem. So I just have felt extremely lucky.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's so congratulations on.
Thank you. Yes, you as well. You as well. Yeah, I couldn't let you go without mentioning that. So I'm excited for you. Well, Zephyr, thank you so much. Do you think there's you have another run in you for office, or is that kind of a wait and see thing? Because you periodically you throw your hat in the ring, 3 or 4 different campaigns. Yes. Anything on the horizon there?
I'm really not planning on it, and I'm really enjoying. But that doesn't mean never. I mean, I love the humanity of politics itself. The particular offices. Mm-hmm. Were ones that I wanted to serve in. Yeah. But I really love the kinds of interactions that politics makes possible. That was one of the great surprises, is that it's strange in the best sense. Yeah. And revealing in the best sense. But I am loving right now supporting other candidates and really, supporting this growing progressive majority in the New York state legislature and in city council. So I don't want to get, lazy on politics, but I get the appeal of not having to worry if I'm saying something totally crazy.
I was going to say, it allows you to be a little more radical, a little more free, right? You can shoot from the hip. Yes, exactly. It's great.
Yep. That's great. Totally. Right.
That's great.
So I really appreciate that. Yeah. Anyway, it's so wonderful to see you, and hopefully, you well. I mean, you said I loved coming to your show. I thought it was hilarious, and also just really enjoyed. I really believe that we have these structural issues, but also these we are facing a lot of despair around people's sort of complete isolation and disconnection, and arts and comedy are really essential, not just as individual, but as communal places to come together. So more of that. I can't wait until we can do it again.
Thank you, Zephyr. I appreciate it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's weirdly been a good time despite the chaos of the pandemic. It has been a good time to put things out there and to connect with people. So good. I'm glad we had a chance to connect. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll see you again down the line.
Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
You too. Zephyr Teachout, everybody. That is the real deal. She's got the stuff, and she keeps coming. And that is what you need in times like this, where the landscape can be so just problematic in so many ways. And you're just like, you're reaching out for any hope, any light. And like a zephyr, she appears. And she's always kind of advocating for the right things and attacking those that are above the law, the big corporations, the Bezoses of the world, the Amazons of the world. And I'm glad that she's operating free now and able to shoot from the hip, and not having to be as careful as maybe someone in office might have to be, because I think she's too important a voice to really go after these people. She needs to be unbridled. So very excited and grateful to Zephyr Teachout for coming on the show and catching up with us. Well, friends, that will do it for today. Thank you so much for watching us. And I hope wherever you are, I don't know if you're in the midst of a snowstorm or perhaps it's sunny and beautiful outside. But wherever you are, thank you for spending some time with us. As always, please remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell, like and comment on the video. And if you wish to support the show, the Ted Alexandro Show, go to patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. Check out the different tiers. Lots of good stuff there. Lots of bonus content, bonus stand-up, and of course, the Ted Alexandro Comedy Academy Masterclass. Episode number 7, class number 7 was posted, I believe, just yesterday. So thank you to those who have signed up as patrons of the show. We do appreciate it. Thank you, one and all, for tuning in. And thank you, of course, to our producer extraordinaire. He's the man on the ones and twos. He is Matthew L. Weiss.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes. We thank our executive producer extraordinaire. She rules with an iron fist, but a heart of gold. She is Madeline Geraldine. I love you very, very much. And we thank our maestro who provides all the music, Pro DLC. Please check out the slate of offerings from Pro DLC wherever you stream your music. Thank you, friends. Be well. Stay in that holiday spirit. Whoop-de-doo. Dickory-dock. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.